Marijuana is the #1 cash crop in America. It used to be wheat and then soy and then corn and then marijuana. Marijuana is now by far the #1 cash crop. And that's true in many places throughout the world. The regulations on marijuana and on other drugs are designed to control. They're not designed to make a better life for the people. They're not designed to create some benefit for the society. They are designed to exert control. And that's really what it's about. It's about control. If I want to go out and smoke pot, now you may not like me, you may think that I'm hurting myself, and you have every right to think that. But if I decide to go out and smoke pot, who else am I hurting? Why should there be any taxpayer funds devoted to controlling whether or not I smoke pot? What has happened is that things have been labeled as war to make them more politically palatable. In the US, we have the war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on this, the war on that. What's actually going on is that in each of these cases, the government is using the term to establish control. What's this war on drugs? In the early part of the 20th century, the United States had prohibition. That was their war on liquor. The 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provided that you could not have alcohol. Now, it was found to be an illegal constitutional amendment, and it was ultimately repealed. But during the time of the 18th Amendment, it was called the Volstead Act, there was such massive amounts of crime going on around alcohol because everybody's attitude was government has no right to tell me I can't drink, I'm going to drink anyway. So you have to consider that there are people who would see that as a grand opportunity. If I can control that market, then boy, I can make a lot of money. I don't want anyone who sees this or listens to what I have to say to think that I'm either advocating or not advocating anything to do with drugs. This conversation, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with drugs. It has to do with the rule of law. It has to do with personal freedom. If I ingest a drug, if I smoke a joint or I snort cocaine, or it doesn't really matter what the drug is. It could be a pharmaceutical drug. It doesn't matter. If I ingest a drug, whose life, liberty, or property am I damaging by that act? If nobody's life, liberty, or property has been damaged, it is not an appropriate thing to call a crime. The act of ingesting a drug, any drug, is by itself not criminal. It has been made criminal. That's what the war on drugs is. It is about determining something to be a crime so that controls can be issued over it. And in pursuit of those controls, lots and lots of money is taken from the people in support of those ends. But people take drugs and then they go out and they rob banks. If I pick this chair up and I bash you over the head, okay, well, let's outlaw chairs. The only legitimate purpose of law is to protect our free exercise of the faculties with which we have been endowed. The basic premise is you're endowed not by your government, but by your creator with certain permanent, unalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and by the pursuit of happiness is meant property rights. And then right after the famous words, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the very next words in that document are, to secure these rights, governments are instituted. Under that system, the only legitimate purpose of government, any government, is to secure and protect the free exercise of the individual rights to life, liberty, and property. And that when government, any government, steps beyond those legitimate duties and responsibilities, that government becomes unlawful. This thing with governments coming in and telling us what we can and cannot do, that only happens because we allow it to. Ultimately, we have to stand up and say, I have the right to make this decision for myself, and I choose not to comply with your requirements. That ultimately that has That has to be the direction. Otherwise, we end up with just more of what we have.